Salam everyone. Today I'd like to discuss some important points in a book by Abdallah Arik called Beyond Probability, and it's about God's mathematical evidence He's given us in the Quran and beyond. So before we start, inshallah, let's read verse 262. Seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. It says that those who believe, those who are Jewish, the Christians, and the converts, and by the way, the converts here, some people translate that as Sabian because the word actually is Sabiin here. But nonetheless, the meaning's the same. Anyone who believes in God, believes in the last day, and leads a righteous life will receive their recompense from their Lord. They have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. So, what an amazing and merciful verse. God is saying it doesn't matter if you call yourself this or that. Here are the three minimum requirements for salvation. Okay, so let's move on to discuss the book. Okay, so just a quick little introduction here to anyone new to the mathematical proof in the Quran. It basically revolves around the number 19. Okay, so for example, the number of chapters in the Quran is 114, which is divisible by 19. The number of verses in the Quran, 6,346, is divisible by 19. The word God or Allah occurs in the Quran 2,698 times, which is divisible by 19. And the sum of all verses or verse numbers where the word God occurs is divisible by 19. So, and God does specifically point to 19 being the common denominator in the Quran, or being a sign in the Quran. So let's go to that for a second. Okay, so in Surah 74, verse 31, we read about this number 19. You know, God's talking about He's appointing the angels to be guardians of hell, and He assigned their number 19, which is seen here in the previous verse. Over it is 19. And God even tells us the significance of this number: to disturb the disbelievers, convince the Christians and Jews, strengthen the faith of the faithful, remove traces of doubt from the hearts of Christian Jews as well as the believers, and to expose those who harbor doubts in their hearts. So we see the specific intention of the number 19 here. And furthermore, just a few verses later, God tells us, Innaha la ihdal qubara, if I said that right, but this is one of the great miracles. And if you haven't noticed already, the numbers in this verse add up to 19. So you have 11 plus 8, that's 19. Okay, so let's go back to the book. So in the Quran, there are also what we call initial chapters. So you have 29 chapters in the Quran that start out in the first one or two verses, and they'll just say something like ALM or KHYAS. So it's just letters, right? And this happens in 29 surahs. So let's go back to just a small piece of their significance. So if you read down here, just to give you an example, there are two chapters that are initialed with the letter Q. Okay? And those two chapters are 50 and 42. They both have the initial Q. Well, it just so happens that the count of the letter Q, if you were to go through these chapters and count just the letter Q, in each of them you will get 57 Qs. Okay, so 57, of course, is 19 times 3, but even more remarkable is you have two Q initial chapters with a count of 57 Qs, and 57 plus 57, if you combine the chapters together, is 114, which is the same as the number of surahs in the Quran, which is, of course, divisible by 19. And also, an extra little piece of significance here is Q could very well stand for the Quran is what we might be told here. Moving on, let's talk about 46:10 for a second. God tells us that a witness from the children of Israel has borne witness to a similar phenomenon. What is that phenomenon? Let's go back to the book. And this is originally from Dr. Rashad Khalifa, and it's quoted here in Beyond Probability. In the book Studies in Jewish Mysticism from 1982, we read on pages 88 and 89, the people, Jews in France, made it a custom to add in their prayers the words Ashrei Termamei Derech. Sorry if I mispronounced it here, but blessed are those who walk on the righteous way. And our rabbi, the pious of blessed memory, wrote that they were completely and utterly wrong. It is all a gross falsehood, because there are 19 times that the holy name is mentioned. And similarly, you will find the word Elohim 19 times, Elohim is God, 19 times in the pericope of Viele Shemot. Similarly, you find that Israel is called sons 19 times. And there are many other examples. All these sets of 19 are intricately intertwined, and they contain many secrets and esoteric meanings. So, is the Quran the first scripture to have this 19 structure? I don't think so, because God tells us that a similar phenomenon was witnessed in previous scriptures. Perhaps it was just the Torah, maybe it was the Torah and the New Testament. And time will tell, but I think it's extremely significant that God is telling us specifically, you're going to disbelieve in it when this same phenomenon has happened before. And here's an example of that phenomenon right here. We can read about it today. Oh, and just a quick little other side piece of significance on, why the number 19. And there's a list of this on submission.org, maybe being the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. But also, the number 19 is the mathematical value of the word one in all scriptural languages. One, wahad, vahad, WAHD, 6 plus 1 plus 8 plus 4, that's 19. And I'm sorry, I should have talked a little bit about geometrical values here, but basically, in the old days, the Arabic alphabet would be used to signify numbers. So when we're looking for the value of an Arabic word, we can take what each number or what each letter signifies as a number and add it together. This is also why many Muslims, instead of typing out in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, or Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, they might just put 786, which is the value of that phrase. Moving on. So let's continue talking about that opening statement in the Quran. The Bismillah, or in the name of God, opens up every surah of the Quran except chapter 9. But despite it missing in chapter 9, it does happen 114 times in the Quran, because it happens in extra time when Solomon says it, which is, I can't remember the exact chapter, but he sends a letter to the Queen of Sheba, and the letter, he says, starts in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. So let's talk about that significant phrase of the Quran. It is composed, as you can see in this table here, I'll make it a little bigger, sorry, of exactly 19 letters. So Bism, Allah, so forth, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. If you take the geometrical value of each of those letters, I'm sorry, if you count each of the letters in Arabic, you'll get a total of 19 letters. Now, if you take the geometrical value, then you'll get the 786 that I was talking about, which is shown in this table here. Feel free to pause. And here's another breakdown of the letters. Bism, which is in the name, has 3 letters. God has 4 letters. Most gracious and most merciful have 6 letters each, total of 19. So, praise God. This is all By the way, I'm just giving you snippets of this miracle. It goes much further, which maybe we'll discuss in another video, inshallah. Some more interesting facts here, if we scroll down a little bit. The opening statement, the Bismillah, if we take each part of this statement followed by the number of letters in that word, so the first is Bism, or in the name, and that has 3 letters. Allah is the second piece, it has 4 letters. Ar-Rahman, the most gracious, has 6 letters. And the fourth piece is Ar-Rahim, which also has 6 letters. That number is also divisible by 19. You can also make that same number, but instead of using the number of letters, use the geometrical value there. So again, the in the name has 102 value. Allah, God, has a 66 value. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim have the corresponding values shown here. Then you do it. The first part has this value, second part, and then you go on to the end, and this whole number is also divisible by 19. To make this even more miraculous, you can get rid of that geometrical value of each word and take each letter. So in the name, or Bism in Arabic, has 3 letters, B, S, M, okay? So those values are 2, 60, 40. So we're doing the same thing as we did in fact 2 and 3, except now we're taking the individual letter value after each part. Again, you take that whole new number you've created and it's still divisible by 19. So tell me here, where does probability end and the miracle begin? Because to me, this is extremely significant and miraculous. It is. This is a sign from God. Now, you can even go so far, if you wanted to, as to break up the value of each letter into their own section. So here the one represents the first part of the phrase, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is in the name. And then before each letter, we're saying, okay, part 1 is the first letter, part 2 is the second letter, part 3 is the fourth letter, and still you get a number divisible by 19. Praise be to God. So, and you don't even need to go this far. Personally, I didn't need to see this. I didn't need to see this. Starting to see this, starting to see what the Quran tells me about the number 19 and its significance, and seeing it play out in the Quran, that's already an incredible miracle. The fact that the Bismillah contains 19 letters and occurs 114 times in the Quran despite it missing from one surah is a miracle. And by the way, this continues on, but if you see here, there's a link, or even easier would be to just do an online search for the title of this book here, which is Beyond Probability by Abdallah Arik. So please feel free to take the time and review this yourself. It's really an interesting set of evidence for the divine authorship of the Quran. Okay, we're already about 14 minutes, and I don't want these videos to go on too long. I'd rather break them up into smaller videos, but please take a look. He will present many more facts here, just around the Bismillah. And I want to hear your opinion. Do you think this could all be a coincidence, happenstance, from a Middle Eastern man that lived 1400 years ago, was able to come up with all this by himself, and maybe you could even argue by some people around him? I don't think so, and inshallah we'll continue to show more evidence of this. This is just a tiny piece of the pie, and God has really given us something amazing that's not just for so-called, what we call today, Muslims, which by the way just means somebody who submits to God. So whoever you are, You may have grown up in a Christian household, a Buddhist household, a Jewish household, a traditional Muslim household. But if you submit to God alone and you avoid the number one sin, which is setting up idols beside God, and these idols don't have to necessarily be statues. These idols could be your money, your children, your loved ones, your car, your house, your job, whatever. Putting God first in all that we do is what's important in this life. And we lead a righteous life by practicing the rights God gave us, by fighting for human justice, or fighting against human injustice, and by doing the various other righteous works that we can logically figure out and that God spells out for us. So, peace everyone. I hope this video has been informative, and take care. Salam.